Thank you for pressing play. Your presence here brings joy to my heart. Hello, fellow enthusiasts. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of the Bridges of Madison County musical. The Bridges of Madison County is a musical based on Robert James Waller's 1992 novel, with a book by Marsha Norman and music and lyrics by Jason Robert Brown. The musical premiered on Broadway at the Gerald Schoenfeld Theatre on February 20, 2014, and closed on May 18, 2014. The Broadway production was directed by Bartlett Sher and starred Kelli O'Hara as Francesca and Steven Pasquale as Robert. Brown's work on the musical won the 2014 Tony Awards for Best Original Score and Best Orchestrations after the Broadway production had already closed. Our focus now turns to pre-Broadway, an important aspect of our discussion. The Bridges of Madison County originated at the Williamstown Theatre Festival and ran from August 1 to August 18, 2013. The musical was directed by Bartlett Sher, with scene design by Michael Jurgen, costumes by Catherine Zuber, lighting by Donald Holder, sound by John Weston, and produced by Stacey Mindick. The cast featured Steven Pasquale Robert, Eleanor Shadow Francesca, Daniel Jenkins Bud, Nick Bailey Michael, Kathleen Kinnunen Carolyn, Cass Morgan Marge, Michael X Martin Charlie, Whitney Basher Marianne, John Paul Ullman, Jennifer Allen, Emma Duncan, Luke Marinkovich, Laura Shoup, and Tim Wright. Kelli O'Hara had been originally announced to play Francesca in the Williamstown production, but because she expected her second child in September 2013, she was replaced by Eleanor Shadow. Welcome to the next segment, where we explore Broadway and its significance in our journey. The musical played on Broadway at the Gerald Schoenfeld Theatre, starting previews on January 17, 2014, and officially opening on February 20, 2014. The musical closed on May 18, 2014, after 37 previews and 100 regular performances. The creative team remained the same, with additional credits for hair and wig design by David Brian Brown and makeup design by Ashley Ryan. The original cast featured Pasquale, Basher, Martin, Marinkovich, Morgan, Allen, and Kinnunen reprising their roles. The new cast members were Kelli O'Hara as Francesca, Hunter Foster as Bud, Derek Tina as Michael, Effie Adema, Katie Klaus, Aaron Rami, and Dan Sharkey. A recording of the original Broadway cast was recorded at Avatar Studios and released in April 2014 digital and May 2014 CD on the Ghostlight label, featuring an 11-piece orchestra from the original Broadway production. Let's now turn our gaze towards subsequent productions and explore the fascinating connections it has to offer. A U.S. national tour, incorporating some minor changes, was announced by producers after the closing of the Broadway production. The tour began on November 28, 2015, at the Des Moines Civic Center in Des Moines, Iowa, with Brown conducting. Additional stops included the Ahmanson Theater in Los Angeles, California, the Hobby Center in Houston, Texas, the Smith Center for the Performing Arts in Las Vegas, Nevada, the Orpheum Theater in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the Kennedy Center in Washington, District of Columbia. The tour starred Elizabeth Stanley as Francesca and Andrew Szymanski as Robert. The tour ended in Greenville, South Carolina, in July 2016. The international premiere of the musical was staged in Manila, the Philippines, by Manila-based Atlantis Theatrical Entertainment Group. It ran from November 20 through December 6, 2015, at the Carlos P. Ramilo Auditorium, RCBC Plaza, Makati. The production starred Joanna Ampel as Francesca and Meg Aisa as Robert. It was directed by Bobby Garcia, with choreography by Cecil Martinez, musical direction by C.A. Javier, scenic design by Faust Penera, costumes by Eric Pineda, and lighting by John Villarreal. The Boston professional premiere of the musical was staged by the Speakeasy Stage Company from May 6 through June 3, 2017. Directed by M. Bebinogara, it starred Jennifer Ellis, Christian Smith, Alessandra Valia, Nick Sixon, Christopher Chu, and Carrie Dowling. Utah Repertory Theatre Company staged the Utah State premiere production from November 25 through December 10, 2017, directed by Utah Rep Artistic Director Johnny Hebner and company member Chase Ramsey, at the Regent Street Black Box inside the Eccles Theatre in Salt Lake City, Utah, the first musical production in this venue. Stars Erin Royal Carlson as Francesca and Kevin Gortzen as Robert, with musical direction by Gene McGuire. Many a Chocolate Factory in London staged the UK premiere that ran from 13 July 2019 to 14 September 2019. The production was directed by Trevor Nunn and starred Jenna Russell as Francesca and Edward Baker Dewey as Robert, along with Georgia Brown, Madison Bullimont, Shanae Holmes, Gillian Kirkpatrick, Paul Fahrenheit Monahan, David Perkins and Dale Rapley. A Danish production was planned for September 2020 but it was cancelled after the theatre declared bankruptcy in early 2020. The Bridges of Madison County had its Australian premiere at the Hayes Theatre in Sydney. The production opened on March 6, 2020, and was scheduled to run through April 5, but it closed in mid-March due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Produced by Matthew Henderson and Neil Gooding, it was directed by Gooding and starred Kate Mori Houlihan as Francesca, Martin Cruz as Robert and Anton Berezin as Bud. A Spanish-language production officially opened on December 13, 2022 at the Teatro Grande in Madrid, following previews from November 18, with Nina as Francesca and Danilo Roch as Robert. In the following section, we'll be immersing ourselves in the captivating world of Acti. Francesca Johnson, an Italian war bride living in Winterset, Iowa in 1965, has had 18 years of quiet, largely unfulfilling farm life to build a home. Her family's stoic husband Bud, rebellious son Michael, and reluctant daughter Caroline are journeying to Indianapolis for 3 days to the National 4-H Fair to show Caroline's prize steer, Stevie, home before you know it. After the family departs, Francesca is planning a relaxing weekend free from responsibilities. That afternoon, a blue pickup truck pulls into her driveway carrying Robert Kincaid, a photographer for the National Geographic who has traveled from Washington State to photograph the famous covered bridges of Madison County. Robert is unable to find the 7th covered bridge, the Rosamond Bridge, and Francesca agrees to accompany him to the bridge for a short scouting trip temporarily lost. Once at the Rosamond Bridge, Francesca feels something developing between her and Robert. What do you call a man like that? After they return to the Johnson farm, Francesca invites Robert for a glass of tea. Francesca, having discovered that Robert was recently in Naples, her hometown, is eager to see pictures of his trip. Robert does not have the pictures with him, but they discuss everyday life in the quiet of Winterset. You're never alone. After realizing that it is too late for Robert to eat at one of the restaurants in town, Francesca persuades Robert to stay for a supper of homegrown vegetables and one of the recipes that Francesca brought with her from Italy. Francesca's neighbor Charlie and Marge, an older couple who are firmly entrenched in the farm life of Winterset, see Robert and his truck at Francesca's home and speculate about his being there. Roberto's hippie presence has caused some commotion in the town preppers' dinner with Francesca. At the farm, Francesca asks about the guitar that Robert has brought into the house, as well as its former owner, Robert's ex-wife, Marion, another life. While cooking, Robert and Francesca share a drink of a long-neglected bottle of brandy. After a dinner where both Robert and Francesca have clearly established a connection, Robert leaves in order to shoot the Rosamond Bridge at dawn the next morning. Afterward, both contemplate their shared evening together. While Robert thinks about the dinner with Francesca wondering, Francesca receives a telephone call from Bud, during which she confides that she has opened the brandy that she had been saving. It had been up there long enough. The next day, while Robert is composing the photograph at the Rosamond Bridge, Francesca shops for a new dress. Look at me. Realizing that Robert has awoken a feeling within her that she has not felt since she left Italy, she goes to the Rosamond Bridge in search of him. At the bridge, Robert explains to her the process of composing a meaningful photograph world inside a frame. Robert then gives Francesca the copy of the National Geographic featuring the photographs that he took of the post-war reconstruction in Naples. Francesca reveals that her fiancé, Paolo, was killed during the war, and she tearfully describes how her life in Naples corresponds to the photographs that Robert took. Realizing that their connection is more significant than she had initially believed, Francesca again invites Robert to clean up and dine at the farm. While Robert is cleaning up, Francesca receives a call from Bud. Carolyn's steer has reached the final and they are staying another day at the fair. Francesca is disoriented from her interactions with Robert and Bud. While Bud celebrates Carolyn's victory in the nearest bar and reflects on his relationship with Francesca, something from a dream, Francesca bathes and prepares for her dinner with Robert. After Robert waits in the kitchen, Francesca comes downstairs in the pink dress that she bought that day. Finally alone with Robert and the implications of the time that they have shared, Francesca asks Robert if this is what always happens when he wanders into a town. She has bought a new dress and invited him in and everything is about to change for them. Robert asserts that he never steps into a world where people belong to each other and that he never intended for their relationship to go this far. They kiss, but are interrupted by a phone call from Marge. Marge asks Francesca to make plans the next day, but Francesca tells Marge that she already has plans to go to Des Moines. After the call, Robert and Francesca dance in the kitchen to the radio Get Closer, and then realize that, while both unknowingly searching for a connection, they have found each other falling into you. After their dance, Francesca leads Robert upstairs to her bedroom. As we venture forward, let's take a closer look at Act II and its impact on our understanding. At the 4-H National Fair, Carolyn worries about Stevie the steer, and Michael fights with Bud State Road 21. Meanwhile, at the farm, Robert is in bed with a still sleeping Francesca, who we are and who we want to be. While preparing for their trip to Des Moines, Francesca explains to Robert how she came to live on an Iowa farm, almost real. Meanwhile, Charlie and Marge, having seen Robert's truck at Francesca's home the whole night before, know that they have spent the night together. After their day in Des Moines and with Francesca's family due home the next day, Francesca and Robert discuss their plans for the future. He asks her to leave Winterset with him, and she considers the reality of leaving her family behind before and after you own second and a million miles. Waking late the next morning, Robert again asks Francesca to come away with him. He is leaving Winterset at 6 o'clock and she must meet him in town before then. As he sets off for town, she tearfully promises to meet him. Later in the afternoon, Bud, Michael, and Carolyn arrive back at the farm and Francesca welcomes her family home. Bud asks what she has prepared for dinner, and Francesca immediately faces the realities of her life. Preoccupied, she constantly checks her watch while unsuccessfully attempting to say her goodbyes to a frustrated Michael, to a devoted Carolyn, and to a misunderstanding Bud. Francesca is worrying about dinner when Marge shows up, lasagna in hand. She realizes her affair is known to Marge, who has no intention of outing her to Bud. Marge comforts a distraught and uncertain Francesca. While Michael and Carolyn fight in their room, Francesca attempts to tell Bud about her affair and asserts to him that she needs more from their relationship. She cannot go on feeling so alone. Francesca then breaks up an argument between Bud and Michael. Attempting to ease the tension and with Francesca still in search of Robert, the whole family heads into town. Carolyn asks Francesca about the man staring at them from afar. It is Robert, waiting for Francesca to join him and leave the small Iowa town behind. Francesca is desperate and overcomes to Robert, but it is nothing more than a fantasy. Francesca is caught between the love of her life and the love of her family. She decides to stay with her children and her husband. Francesca and Robert, both devastated by the impossibility of their situation, exchange a final look before heading their separate ways. In the subsequent years, Carolyn marries and has a child, Michael graduates from medical school, and Charlie and Bud both succumb to illness, leaving Francesca and Marge alone when I'm gone. After Bud's funeral, Francesca thanks Marge for her unspoken support throughout the years. Once Francesca is alone in her now empty home, the telephone rings. No one is on the other end, but she clearly wonders if it could be Robert, even so many years later. Robert, now an older man himself, calls the offices of the National Geographic to inform them that he will no longer be shooting photographs due to an illness of his own. He thanks his secretary for helping him wait for Francesca's call, which never came. Alone in his home, he packs all of his belongings save one letter, and reminisces about his time with Francesca and the following years that they have spent apart. It all fades away. In her own home, Francesca considers calling Robert, but instead looks through the National Geographic featuring the pictures of the Roseman Bridge. She finally takes the long-saved bottle of brandy off the shelf. Francesca comes to the Roseman Bridge, letter in hand. Inside, she finds the photograph Robert took of her on the bridge, as well as a letter stating that he has died. He tells her that he understands why she made the choice that she did, and that her love for her family was part of his love for her. She tearfully considers the path that brought them together and ultimately separated them, but regrets neither her affair with him nor her choice to stay with her family. In their final moments, Robert and Francesca, pairing as they were when they first fell in love, embrace on the Roseman Bridge, always better. As we venture forward, let's examine musical numbers in detail and gain a deeper appreciation for its significance. Act E to build a home. Francesca and company. Home before you know it. Bud, Michael, Carolyn and Francesca temporarily lost Robert. What do you call a man like that? Francesca, you're never alone. Bud and company. Another life. Marion, wondering. Robert and Francesca, look at me. Francesca, Robert and company. The world inside a frame. Robert, something from a dream. Bud, get closer. Marge and radio singers falling into you. Robert and Francesca. Act I State Road, a real world state fair. Singer, Michael, Carolyn and company. Who we are and who we want to be. Robert, Francesca and company. Almost real. Francesca, before and after you own. Second and a million miles. Robert and Francesca, when I'm gone. Charlie, Bud and company. It all fades away. Robert, always better. Francesca, Robert and company. As we transition to the next segment, let's unravel the mysteries surrounding music and gain a fresh perspective. The music draws on various styles, but is largely influenced by American folk music, and there are several unaccompanied vocal parts with definitive folk undertones. The orchestra is mid-sized, with the musical being scored for piano, 2 guitars, 1 doubling on mandolin, acoustic electric bass, 3 violins, 1 viola, 1 cello, and a sizable array of percussion, including drum kit. In this section, we'll be exploring critical reception. According to Playbill, the critical reviews were divided. Although the musical had admirers who responded to Brown's score that mixed folk, country, pop and operatic passages, it failed to ignite wide audience appeal at the box office. Ben Brantley of the New York Times called the show disproportionately long, but praised star O'Hara, calling her one of the most exquisitely expressive stars in musical theatre. He also praised composer Brown's score, calling it sumptuous. Without wasting any more time, let's jump into the fascinating world of awards and nominations. The Bridges of Madison County received 9 2014 Drama Desk Award nominations: Outstanding Musical, Outstanding Actor in the Musical Steven Pasquale, Outstanding Actress in the Musical Kelli O'Hara, Outstanding Director of a Musical Bartlett Sher, Outstanding Music Jason Robert Brown, Outstanding Lyrics Jason Robert Brown, Outstanding Book of a Musical Marsha Norman, Outstanding Orchestrations Jason Robert Brown, and Outstanding Sound Design in the Musical John Weston. Brown won for Outstanding Orchestrations and Outstanding Music. The musical received 2 nominations for the 2014 Outer Critics Circle Awards: Outstanding New Score Broadway or Off-Broadway and Outstanding Actress in a Musical O'Hara. The musical was nominated for 3 2014 Drama League Awards: Outstanding Production of a Broadway or Off-Broadway Musical and Distinguished Performance Award Kelli O'Hara and Steven Pasquale. The musical received 4 2014 Tony Award nominations: Best Performance by a Leading Actress in the Musical Kelli O'Hara, Best Original Score Music and Lyrics written for the theatre, Brown Music and Lyrics. Best Lighting Design of a Musical, Donald Holder. Best Orchestrations, Jason Robert Brown. The musical won awards for Best Original Score and Best Orchestrations for Jason Robert Brown. Your feedback helps me improve, so please take a moment to leave a comment or review.